Today, we're going somewhere harder because there's a test of character that's more brutal than rejection and more dangerous than opportunity. It's the moment when doing the right thing means standing alone. When the system, the institution, the establishment, the people who are supposed to be on your side tells you to sit down, shut up, and fall in line. And your character says, I can't do that. Have you ever been in a room where you knew the right thing to do? You could see it clearly, but doing it would cost you everything. Your position, your relationships, your safety, your reputation. That's the ceiling and the floor. Your character is both. It's the ceiling that determines how high your gift can go, and it's the floor that holds you up when the world tries to pull you down. This is Character C's, Episode 3. Take the DNA of Design quiz if you haven't. Link in the description. Free. This episode is about what happens when your design puts you at odds with the system. Every design type faces this differently. The seer sees what others can't and gets called crazy. The catalyst transforms environments and gets called disruptive. Navigator builds frameworks and gets called rigid. When the system rejects your design, your character is the only thing that keeps you standing. Take the quiz, know your design, then let's talk about the people who stood. Let me tell you about a woman who had one moment, one defining moment, and her character in that moment saved an entire nation. Esther, an orphan, raised by her cousin Mordecai, Jewish, living in Persia under King Xerxes, one of the most powerful rulers in the ancient world. Through a series of events she didn't orchestrate, Esther became queen. Now here's what most people miss about Esther's story. She didn't become queen because of her ambition. She didn't scheme her way to the throne. The Bible says she won favor with everyone who saw her, not through manipulation, but through something the text calls grace. There was something about her, character, that drew people in. But the crown wasn't the test. The crown was the setup for the test. A man named Haman, the king's chief advisor, devised a plan to exterminate every Jewish person in the Persian Empire, a genocide. And he got the king to sign the decree. It was law, irreversible. Mordecai sent word to Esther, you have to go to the king. You have to stop this. You're the only one who can. And here's the problem. In Persia, you don't just walk into the king's throne room. If you approach the king without being summoned, you could be executed on the spot. The only exception was if the king extended his golden scepter to you. If he didn't, you died. Esther hadn't been summoned in 30 days. She had no guarantee the king would receive her. Going to him was a death sentence with a maybe attached. What would you do? You're safe, you're queen, nobody knows you're Jewish. You could stay silent, protect yourself, and let someone else figure it out. That's what gifting without character does. It calculates the risk and chooses self-preservation. Esther's response is one of the most powerful statements of character in all of Scripture. She said, go gather all the Jews in Shusha and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as well, and then I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. If I perish, I perish. That's character, not gifting, not strategy, not political calculation. Character. The willingness to walk into the room knowing it might cost you everything. Because the right thing is more important than a safe thing. King extended the scepter. Esther spoke. Haman was exposed. The Jewish people were saved, and Esther's character, forged in orphanhood, tested in the palace, proven in the throne room, changed the course of history. Mordecai said something to Esther before she made her decision that I think about constantly. He said, who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. For such a time as this, every invisible act of character in Esther's life, every moment of grace, every quiet faithfulness, every decision to be who she was instead of who the system wanted her to be, was preparing her for the one moment that mattered most. What if the character you're building right now, in the invisible, in the unrewarded, in the unnoticed, is preparing you for a moment you can't see yet? Now let me show you the opposite. A leader who had the same setup. Chosen, anointed, positioned, but whose character couldn't hold. King Saul, the first king of Israel, tall and handsome, chosen by God, anointed by the prophet Samuel. The people loved him. He had everything, and his character cracked at the first real test. Samuel told Saul to wait for him at Gilgal. Wait 7 days. Samuel would come and offer the sacrifice before the battle. Simple instruction, clear command. Just wait. Saul waited 6 days. On the 7th day, his army started deserting. The Philistines were gathering. The pressure was mounting, and Saul thought, I can't wait any longer. I'll do it myself. He offered the sacrifice, and Samuel arrived immediately after. Samuel looked at Saul and said, You have done a foolish thing. You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. Your kingdom will not endure. One act of impatience, one moment where his character couldn't carry the weight of waiting, and it cost him the kingdom. But it didn't stop there. Saul's character continued to erode. When David, a shepherd boy, killed Goliath and the people celebrated David, Saul became consumed with jealousy. He spent years hunting David, trying to kill the very man God had chosen to succeed him. Saul's gifting put him on the throne. His character removed him from it. God said something devastating about Saul. He said, I regret that I have made Saul king because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Esther said, If I perish, I perish, and walked toward the throne. Saul said, I can't wait, and walked away from his. Same test, different character, different ending. The ceiling and the floor. Esther's character was her floor. It held her up when the risk was death. Saul's character was his ceiling. It capped his reign at the first sign of pressure. Let me bring this into the modern era, because the test of standing alone against the system isn't just ancient history. It happened less than 100 years ago, and the man who faced it paid with his life. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, German pastor, brilliant theologian, one of the most gifted minds in 20th century Christianity. And when Adolf Hitler rose to power and the German church, the institutional church, capitulated, Bonhoeffer was one of the few who said, no. You need to understand what happened in Germany. The institutional church didn't just tolerate Hitler. Large portions of it embraced him. They called it the German Christian movement. They merged the cross with the Swastika. They removed the Old Testament from their Bibles because it was too Jewish. Pastors swore loyalty oaths to Hitler. And Bonhoeffer stood up and said, this is not Christianity. This is idolatry. He helped form the Confessing Church, a resistance movement within German Christianity. He ran an underground seminary. He wrote The Cost of Discipleship, where he coined the phrase, cheap grace. The idea that the church was offering forgiveness without repentance, blessing without obedience, grace without the cross. And then came the moment that tested his character beyond anything theology could prepare him for. 1939, Bonhoeffer was in America, safe. He had been invited to teach at Union Theological Seminary in New York. He could have stayed. He could have waited out the war in safety and comfort. His gifting, his brilliance as a theologian would have been celebrated. He would have had a long, comfortable career. He went back to Germany. He wrote to a friend, I have come to the conclusion that I made a mistake in coming to America. I must live through this difficult period in our national history with the people of Germany. I will have no right to participate in the reconstruction of Christian life in Germany after the war if I do not share in the trials of this time with my people. He joined the resistance. He was involved in a plot to assassinate Hitler. He was arrested, in April 1943. He spent 2 years in prison, and on April 9th, 1945, just 2 weeks before the concentration camp was liberated by Allied forces, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was executed by hanging at Flossenburg. 2 weeks, 14 days from freedom, and his character held to the last. Camp doctor who witnessed his execution wrote, "I saw Pastor Bonhoeffer kneeling on the floor, praying fervently to his God. I was most deeply moved by the way this lovable man prayed, so devout, so certain that God heard his prayer. In the almost 50 years that I have worked as a doctor, I have hardly ever seen a man die so entirely submissive to the will of God." Bonhoeffer's gifting could have kept him safe in America. His character brought him back to Germany. His gifting could have written books from a distance. His character chose the cross up close. Now let me show you what happens when gifting builds an empire and character is nowhere to be found. Lance Armstrong, 7 Tour de France titles, cancer survivor, global icon, the yellow bracelet, the foundation, the story of overcoming that inspired millions, and yet all of it was a lie. Armstrong didn't just dope. He ran the most sophisticated doping program in the history of professional sports. He bullied, threatened, and sued anyone who told the truth. Teammates who spoke up were destroyed. Journalists who investigated were silenced. He looked into the cameras, just like this one, and lied repeatedly, passionately, convincingly. His gifting was real. He was an extraordinary athlete even without the drugs, but his character was a fraud. And when the truth finally came out, when the evidence became undeniable, he was stripped of all 7 titles, banned from competition for life. His foundation distanced itself from him. The empire his gifting built was demolished by the character it was built on. Here's what gets me about Armstrong. He had the talent to complete clean. He had the ability to be great without the fraud, but his character couldn't accept the risk of losing. His character couldn't carry the weight of honest competition, so he cheated. And cheating didn't just destroy his career, it destroyed the trust of everyone who believed in him. Bonhoeffer gave up safety for truth. Armstrong gave up truth for victory. One is remembered as a martyr, the other is remembered as a fraud. The ceiling and the floor, character, determines which story you become. One more before my story, and this one is my favorite in the entire series, because this man proves that character isn't just something you carry. Character is something you fight with. Desmond Doss, World War II, the Battle of Okinawa, Hacksaw Ridge. Doss was a conscientious objector, a Seventh-day Adventist who believed the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," meant exactly what it said. He enlisted as a combat medic. He refused to carry a weapon, refused to even touch one. His fellow soldiers mocked him, beat him, threw shoes at him in the barracks. His commanding officers tried to have him discharged on psychiatric grounds. They called him a coward. They said he'd get people killed. And then came Hacksaw Ridge, May 1945, one of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific Theater. American soldiers climbed a 400-foot cliff face to attack a Japanese stronghold. They were decimated. The order came to retreat. Doss didn't retreat. Bullets flew and mortars exploded around him. Desmond Doss, unarmed, alone on the ridge, began lowering wounded soldiers down the cliff face, one by one. He'd crawl to a wounded man, drag him to the edge, tie a rope around him, and lower him to safety. Then he'd crawl back for the next one. He prayed the same prayer over and over. "Lord, let me get one more. He saved 75 men that night. 75, without firing a single shot, without carrying a single weapon. His character was his weapon. Desmond Doss received the Medal of Honor, the first conscientious objector in American history to receive it. The same men who threw shoes at him carried him off the battlefield on a stretcher after he was finally wounded. The same officers who tried to discharge him recommended him for the highest military honor in the nation. The system said he was a coward. His character said otherwise. The institution tried to remove him. His character outlasted the institution. Gifting carries a weapon. Character is the weapon. All right, my turn. And this one connects to Bonhoeffer and Doss more than you might expect, because my story isn't about a battlefield or a Nazi regime. It's about the place that was supposed to be home, the church. I served faithfully in the institutional church for many, many, many years. Multiple denominations, multiple ministries. I gave my time, my money, my energy, my heart, some of the best years of my life. I built relationships. I served leaders. I showed up early and stayed late. I did the work that nobody wanted to do, and I was never chosen. Not once, not by any of the denominations or ministries I faithfully served was I chosen to be a leader. Not because I lacked gifting, not because I lacked faithfulness, because I didn't fit the system. I asked questions the system didn't want asked. I challenged structures the system wanted protected. I believed, and still believe, in the priesthood of all believers, that every person has direct access to God, and the top-down hierarchical system didn't have room for that. Have you ever served something faithfully, given it everything, and been told you don't belong? Not because of what you did wrong, but because of what you believed was right? But it wasn't just rejection. It was persecution, stolen money, lies told about me, social alienation, corruption I witnessed firsthand. Every ministry, every church, every Bible college that I had built relationships with eventually closed their doors to me. Character saw that the institution wasn't God or what Jesus ever had in mind. The system wasn't the kingdom, the building wasn't the body, and the doors that closed behind me were pushing me towards doors I never would have walked through on my own. The organized church closed its doors to me, and that thrust me out into the harvest field, among the New Age community, among the spiritualists, among the wealthy, the business leaders, the creatives, among those who still believe in God and Christ, but have been burned by the system, just like me, among the people watching this video right now. Bonhoeffer left America and went back to Germany because his character wouldn't let him stay safe while his people suffered. I left the institutional church not by choice, but by force, and found that the harvest field was bigger than any building. Doss was mocked, beaten, and nearly discharged for his convictions, and then his character saved 75 lives on a ridge. I was mocked, alienated, and shut out for my convictions. And then my character led me to podcasting, to YouTube, to content creating, to the SeeLink, to you. John Paul Jackson said, "Do it like I did, Caleb." Except in a different way. The institutional church was his way. This right here, this camera, this conversation is mine. Different way, same character. The ceiling and the floor. The institution tried to put a ceiling on my calling, but my character was the floor, and the floor held. Esther walked into the throne room knowing it might kill her. Her character said, "If I perish, I perish." Saul couldn't wait 7 days. His character said, "I'll do it myself." Bonhoeffer left safety and chose the cross. Armstrong left truth and chose the fraud. Doss carried no weapon and saved 75 lives. His character was the weapon. And the church closed its doors to me. But character sees what closed doors cannot. Character sees the field beyond the building. Character sees the people beyond the pews. Character sees the calling beyond the institution. Next episode is the finale, and it's the most important one because we're going to talk about what happens when character isn't just tested, but when character is the only thing left. When the gifting is gone, the platform is gone, the institution is gone, and all you have is who you are in the dark. That's episode 4, What Outlasts the Gift. Take the DNA of Design quiz. Link in the description. 2, share this with someone who's standing alone right now. Someone whose character has put them at odds with the system. Let them know they're not crazy. They're not wrong. They're just early. 3, subscribe. The finale is next, and it's going to bring everything together. Gifting opens the door, character keeps it open. I'll see you in the finale.